What's up, y'all? Austin Winters here, and today with me is my good friend Josh Lewis. So like I did last time, I want to run through a few uniqueifiers that Josh has that makes him the unique individual that he is. First and foremost, he signed up for his first bodybuilding competition when he was 16 years old, and he actually won it. And then he went to win on three more, is that right? Three more bodybuilding championships. He's coached other people in bodybuilding competitions. He has trained about 150 people, either physically helping them with their lifting weights, their exercise, or making nutrition plans for them. So he's got a lot of experience in that realm, and currently he does medical sales for Johnson & Johnson and is the head of the Dallas region, a $7 million region. So he's doing a lot of stuff in that health and fitness world, and that's why we're having him here today. Josh, welcome to Winter's World.
Yeah, glad to be here, buddy.
Happy to have you, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we should jump right into it. And I think what every guy has thought about at least once and wants to know about is, should I do steroids?
So we start out with the big question, like out of the gate.
Question. Should I do steroids, yes or no? What situation should you do steroids? What are the upsides? What are the downsides? Tell us what you know, Josh.
No way to ease into it.
No, never.
No, that's fine. So as obviously, as Austin was putting it, I've been in many competitions now, and that world of bodybuilding, people kind of look at it as it's synonymous with performance enhancing drugs.
Are steroids legal, anabolic steroids legal in like the bodybuilding realm, or?
So there are natural organizations that you can compete in that do test their athletes, but as far as the sanctioned bodies that I competed in NPC, it is not something that they test for. So
okay.
It's just,
so you could get away with it.
It's accepted that it's part of it.
Is it considered cheating if you knew another guy was doing it and you didn't? Would you be like kind of upset about that, or that's part of the game?
In that world, it's part of the game. Okay. There is I competed in the teenage division, which is, I believe, and still in the NPC. It's from ages 16 years old to 19 years old. That's kind of the one that you see, most guys are not using anything just yet because they're so young, and for good reason. But once then you kind of step up into the men's division after that, at least for me, that's when that kind of transition took place.
Okay.
Just to be on an even playing field, basically.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah. So that makes sense. And then, so can you walk through why should you do steroids or why should you not do steroids? Kind of what is your take on what you're putting in your body, and what makes anabolic steroids so special? Is it naturally produced?
So testosterone itself is the base.
The hormone?
Testosterone is itself an anabolic androgenic steroids.
Okay.
Anabolic meaning it builds muscles, androgenic meaning that it gives kind of male side effects in the sense of like kind of how, facial hair, things of that nature. Like those are the androgenic side effects, if you will.
Okay.
Those are the things that help boys as they're going through puberty develop and have all the features that they do. But every steroid that has been designed or put into market is all built off of testosterone itself.
Okay.
Yeah. So you already naturally are producing it. One of them, and then everything off.
So there are several different types of steroid?
Yes. Without getting into...
when I had asthma or something, they would give me steroids. Or if I had an infection in my lungs.
Yes.
That's different than
anabolic
steroids.
Yes. So you have things that are going to be cortisone steroids, like if you've got really bad inflammation in areas, you'll go get a cortisone injection.
And that's not going to get you muscular.
No, not so, or not at all actually. And that is what they refer to as a catabolic steroid because it's anti-inflammatory.
Okay.
It's trying to cool down, release the pain in that area. Whereas anabolic steroids are just the exact opposite. Catabolic breaking down, anabolic building up. So yes. Okay. And then within the anabolic steroids themselves, there is a large tree of that they branch off of, being where I guess you can look at it as where they have different parent hormones, and then they break down off of that.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. I want to dive into that a little more later, but I want to get into a more common supplement that I see all the time. Like obviously we played sports growing up, so like in high school, everyone's told to have protein all the time. Mm-hmm. What differentiates different types of protein? Is it better to eat it from like beef, like real meat, or a shake? Are there different types of shakes? If I'm trying to build muscle mass, what supplemental proteins should I look to?
So the biggest thing, and really, protein itself, there are a lot of different types out there. The most, I guess, common that people would probably be used to seeing.
Whey protein?
Whey protein, casein protein, And they all kind of digest differently because they're based off of different things normally, or the I guess parent ingredient that they come from. So you have different proteins that are going to come from chicken, beef. Whey protein itself is normally very easily digested, but dependent upon what the base that it's from is, where you'll see with a lot of protein powders, there's hydrolyzed whey protein and just regular whey protein. Meaning hydrolyzed just meaning it's broken down a little bit easier to digest. There's lactose free, where ones don't have any milk fillers in it and things like that, as far as just protein supplements go. So it's kind of a mixed bag that you get with those a lot of times.
Okay.
Casein, the other,
that's the slow
digesting one, which all have their benefits, depending upon what you're wanting to do. Your body, likes to have a variety in there of slow digesting, faster digesting, because amino acids are all, proteins are built off of chains of amino acids, right. And all different proteins protein sources have different amino acids amongst them. So it's good to kind of have a varied source. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, exactly.
That makes sense. And then close to protein, but a little bit different, is creatine. So like I've known different protein powders will have a little sprinkled in there. I've been told it's not enough to really do anything. Mm-hmm. What are the benefits of creatine, and are there any downsides to that supplement?
So creatine, actually, it's really interesting. I always have told people it's the one supplement that really does work, and there's science behind it. So creatine itself, and I'm going to forget my kinesiology professors would be disappointed, but basically like phosphocreatine, things of that nature at a cellular level are like your short burst of energy sources.
Okay.
So in theory, supplementing with creatine helps you with kind of people always say it makes you stronger, those extra couple reps.
Twitch muscle.
And that's because you use the force, and like I said, if it's not phosphocreatine, I apologize, but that's the energy source derived from it, and very short bursts of energy, quick bouts of strength. Your body uses that as its main source. So and there's actually plenty of science to back up that supplementing with it really does allow you to be a little bit stronger, a little bit faster in those situations when you're using that as the kind of single energy source.
Okay, so creatine's a good thing. Obviously, protein, you want a variety of that.
Yep.
The last supplement I wanted to ask you about is human growth hormone, HGH.
So HGH, and gosh, that would be a performance enhancing drug, not something.
You wouldn't consider it a supplement?
No, not. Okay. But there are over-the-counter forms of HGH. I know that they sell. But,
is that like deer antler, or is that something different?
Deer antler spray was supposed to be a testosterone boost, a human growth hormone enhancer. That if you took it, it upped your body's natural levels. But synthetic, like real human growth hormone that you have to inject, is what most competitors use. Athletes that you see get busted for it. Can't buy that at a store. The real source of it you have to get through a prescription or friends on the black market,
gotcha.
I guess. But growth hormone is actually interesting because anabolic androgenic steroids really build muscle, whereas growth hormone is more kind of, with most athletes use it on the recovery side of things, just because it can definitely aid in coming back from injuries, things of that nature. And interesting that growth hormone actually, steroids, if I can go back, cause what they call hypertrophy, which is the increased size in the muscle cells.
Okay.
Whereas HGH can actually lead to what they refer to as hyperplasia, whereas over time you produce more muscle cells, allowing you the chance to be bigger than you naturally would be because you have more muscle cells to build up and get larger over time. But most people don't realize that you have to use growth hormone for a long time normally for that to happen. Normally about a year or so is that when that really starts to happen. And that's why you see a lot of guys that look so weird that have abused it through the years, because there's no way for your body to really just say that, hey, we're just going to make the muscle cells multiply or grow. You'll see where they start having calcification and growth of on their elbows.
Which means what? Just like it's extending or something?
Essentially, and it's growing larger because, like I said, the body has no difference or has no way to differentiate what it's supposed to grow and what it's not supposed to. Growth hormone is the parent hormone that makes everything grow as you're growing up and becoming an adult. So yeah, it's interesting that will happen. But what's really crazy about it is if you take it as an adult, you can get systemic growth on organs, bones, things of that nature, but it won't make you any taller because your growth plates are closed by that time.
So if you took it as a kid, could it make you really tall?
Yes.
Is that kind of similar to giantism? Like they have just crazy HGH pumping?
Yes, and it never shuts off essentially. So the pituitary gland, which is the one who sends out growth hormone, basically is never able to shut that off, and that's why people like that pretty much continue to grow almost their entire lives sometimes, and leads to a much quicker death as well. Actually,
fascinating.
Yes.
So make sure I got this right. HGH is more muscle cells. Steroids is larger muscle cells. So if I do those together, am I just going to be a brick house?
That's where a lot of guys, combine
so is that the bodybuilding community, they like to do both?
Yes. Once you get to a certain point, that's something you definitely throw in. And growth hormone itself can really allow someone to stay much leaner than they normally would. When you inject human growth hormone, it raises your IGF-1 levels, insulin-like growth factors, which is essentially like the hormone that, once again, I'm being scientific, so not right on the ball here as far as my understanding from a meathead of it, but IGF-1 is what just leads to kind of the growth of a lot of different things in the body, muscle, like I said, organs, everything, and having elevated IGF-1 levels can also lead to basically a faster metabolism as well, to where you're burning through fat quicker. So a lot of guys use it for that too. Yes, but another interesting thing with it is having heightened levels of IGF, because your body naturally brings growth hormone through impulses. Most of the time it's going to be highest when you're asleep. That's when the body needs to recover. So that's going to be your biggest pulse of it. But when you do have larger pulses of it, it will naturally raise your blood glucose. So
is that similar to diabetes? Because I know IGF, you said insulin.
Yes, insulin-like growth factor. And so to stay on the growth hormone topic, when you inject it and you raise your IGF-1, raise your growth hormone levels, it will cause your blood glucose to raise as well. When you're exogenously administering it like that,
that means out of body, you're injecting it.
Yes, endogenously produced by the body, exogenously coming from an outside source. But when you inject it like that, your body doesn't go through its natural up and downs. It's staying elevated at all times, so that can cause guys to have high resting blood glucose levels, which is one of the main factors they look at for people that do have diabetes. So over abuse of it over time, guys actually can develop diabetes from having heightened levels like that. And that's happened plenty with large bodybuilders over the years.
Interesting. Okay, so I think that kind of covered a lot of the supplement phase that I wanted to ask you about. Next, I want to jump into exercise. And I think, to me, the age-old question, and something I've noticed as a pattern for most people, is most individuals either like cardio or weightlifting better. Obviously, people like exercise or don't like exercise in varying levels, but like for me, I'd much rather go run than pick up, put down weights. So how do you establish a balance between that? Is it okay to do just one, not the other? And like, I don't know, just talk on that for a little bit.
Everyone, to your point, like you said, you enjoy running more. Everyone's going to have their thing that they prefer over the other. And a lot of times it's actually just people have not been exposed to the other side of it. And really, it's fear of the unknown. A lot of athletes that were big endurance athletes never really had to lift weights for their sports, things of that nature. Once they get away from that, it's like, well, all I really know how to do when I work out on my own is run. I don't really know how to properly lift weights, things of that nature. So I think everybody, it's a good idea to be exposed to kind of all different variants of fitness, weightlifting, cross training, endurance, whether that's biking, running, swimming, whatever it may be, just because from a biomechanics perspective, it kind of keeps you in balance, if that makes sense.
So it's kind of like the protein thing. You need variety.
Yeah, exactly. Functional fitness is probably the best way to describe it all as a whole.
And I think it's interesting you say that, because I'm like the opposite. I was super exposed to weightlifting and football growing up, but I think I was taught such bad form or like squatting down to my ankles with a bar. And so I just was like, all right, I'm done with that. I know how to run. I don't want to lift any more weights. Okay, cool. So that makes sense. You need a balance. You can't just stick to one. Obviously, if you're a runner, you're going to do more running than weightlifting, but you can complement what you do with the other.
Exactly. And you know this from being friends with me personally. I've gotten really into running over the last, I guess, year and a half now.
After being a meathead for like a decade.
After just lifting weights for a long time and only really doing cardio when I was forced to for competitions. But even for me, it was like holy crap, I've never done this before. Like I've never run. I need to like really research, learn how to do this properly. But now in doing it, I've really seen like, wow, this is from a health perspective something that I should have had in, all these years, because it keeps, my body from not as much pounding under the weights, and, a little bit more exercise for your heart, keeping that in check. So it's interesting.
Okay, interesting. Now I kind of want to get into different nutrition or diet areas. So first I want to start with what I think is like one of the more popular fads. Now, something I've done my whole life without knowing what it was. I just hate breakfast.
Yeah.
So intermittent fasting, not eating while you sleep, waking up and then not eating till noon. There's some hour range there. But what does intermittent fasting do to the body? Is it beneficial? Is it bad? So if you could talk on that.
And I think a lot of people have done it without ever realizing that they do it. Most people, their natural version of intermittent fasting though is they don't eat all day, and then at night they just cram a bunch of shit down. Exactly. But the idea behind it, and there's different ways you can do it. As far as I know, I think the tried and true, or like the just staple version of intermittent fasting, fast for 16 hours, you have an 8-hour feeding period. So, let's say you stop eating at 8 p.m., the next day you wouldn't eat until noon. And the idea behind it really, as far as, once again, none of it's medical advice, just, from a meathead who kind of understands
our favorite in-house meathead scientist.
Yes. The idea of it is just to not have your body constantly digesting food, which, it's constant work on the digestive system. A lot of guys that are into bodybuilding and stuff eat all the time, and it's a lot of work on your system. And, by not eating, and when you're fasting, keeps your body's blood glucose levels much lower and much more stable, and which is much better for your metabolic health. People, like I was saying with the growth hormone thing, having elevated levels of blood glucose can lead to adult onset diabetes down the road. So keeping that at a much lower level, it's just much healthier for your body. It can help it to become more insulin sensitive, is what they refer to as, meaning that you have lower resting blood glucose levels. So whenever you eat, your body naturally will normally release insulin if you're eating carbs and things of that nature to store away the food that or the carbs that you've just eaten. And when you have lower resting levels like that, your body becomes much more efficient, essentially, in a way of doing that. So whenever you eat those carbs, your body, instead of storing it as fat, when it's kind of overloaded, it will then shuttle it to the muscles, use it as fuel, things of that nature.
Okay, so that sounds a lot like ketosis, which keto is another keto, guido, so then can you compare the two? Because I know with intermittent fasting, it's just, I guess, the dry period, starving yourself, fasting. And then keto is fats and meats. Do I have that right?
So
no carbs?
A true ketogenic diet is going to be high fat, moderate protein, and essentially no carbs. Science shows anywhere between under 20 to 30 net grams of carbs a day is normally what most people they need to stay below to be in ketosis. So to go back to the intermittent fasting though, so it can kind of compare the two. When you have that 8-hour period, you essentially can eat what you normally would. You don't have to restrict carbs, things of that nature. You still can't pig out, but that's just when your body is going to feast. And once again, it just keeps you at kind of a healthier process of not always eating food. Cognitive levels or cognitive enhancement is also another reason that people would be led to do it. There's actually a lot of studies to support that when you're fasted, your body is a little bit more in a heightened sense. I believe that has something to do just with natural, how we've evolved, that when we're hungry, we're more heightened. I need to get food, I need to be fed. So you actually can be kind of more on your game when you're in a situation where you're more hungry, essentially. So I use it for that personally. But during that 8-hour period, you can eat carbs, fats, protein, whatever you want. Ketogenic diet, that's going to be using fats as your main source, because once the body has been deprived of carbs, it's always its number one go-to source for fuel.
So it's the easiest fuel to burn?
Exactly. It's the easiest fuel to digest and use, because insulin knows either, okay, I'm going to store it as fat because you've already got plenty of carbs floating around, glucose being the main that comes from carbs as your source. I can use that, I'll store it as fat. Or if you're low on food and don't have enough glucose stored away, it'll immediately shuttle those carbs there to be used as fuel. When you deprive the body of that, it doesn't like it because it's the easiest fuel source, but it will go into using fats as kind of your main fuel source. And those are referred to as ketones, essentially. So you have those little pee strips that people use to see if they're in ketosis. Basically, all that's checking is your blood ketone level.
Okay.
You reach over a certain threshold of ketones, you're technically in ketosis, is what they refer to.
Okay, so it's similar. It's just instead of being time restrictive, it's carbohydrate restrictive.
Exactly. And a lot of people, and you can lose weight very quickly with both, because intermittent fasting, you're kind of starving yourself in a sense, and a lot of people will work out while they're fasted, so their body has to use the fuel that's stored as the energy. Losing weight that way is great, but with ketosis, whenever you're not bringing or digesting carbs at all, your body naturally will lose water very quickly, because those carbs are what hold on to the intracellular fluid in your muscles and things of that. So people a lot will be like, man, I lost 10 pounds on keto so quick.
Water weight.
A lot of it is just water, but over time you can lose weight with it, I think, quicker than intermittent fasting, because you don't have carbs there and your body is having to use fats and protein as its fuel source. So you theoretically can burn fat at a little bit quicker rate like that. Okay,
interesting. And then another restrictive diet that I think a lot of people talk about now, Joe Rogan does it every January, would be the carnivore diet, which sounds like it's keto with a little bit, which is more restrictive. So what's kind of your take on the carnivore diet? And I know our mutual friend Mitch Andrews is starting that tomorrow.
Yes.
Starting the carnivore diet. So.
Or you say you will, Mitch. We'll see how long you stick with it.
So what advice do you have for Mitch and people like Mitch who are interested in maybe doing a month or 2 months of just animal products, just animal meat?
So to be upfront, I actually it's one of the only diets that I've never tried myself.
So you've done keto and
intermittent fasting, just the plain old eating clean, chicken, broccoli, veggies, that type of thing. But with carnivore and my, I guess, studying on it and really trying to figure it out, it seems like it is a version of keto in a sense that you are doing high protein, higher fat, no carbs. But with carnivore, it seems to be a much higher protein than when in comparison to keto, because a lot of people don't realize in keto, when your body's deprived of carbs, if you actually eat enough protein, your body will actually convert that protein into glucose. Okay. So as a last resort, if you eat enough of it, so that actually can knock your body out of ketosis.
So it can you eat enough meat, it can turn into a carb?
Yes.
It acts like a carb?
Yes, it will act like glucose. Your body goes through gluconeogenesis, which is the creation of glucose off of protein, and will then be used as a fuel source. So that can kick the body out of protein or out of ketosis, actually.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, but still, with the carnivore diet, you don't have to be in a true ketosis state to burn fuel or still lose weight, and you would naturally do so in the carnivore diet because it's higher protein. If you're someone who lifts a lot more weights, it's naturally going to maybe be a little bit better to drift towards because you need that protein for recovery.
Right.
But I don't know how much you would be in a true ketogenic state if your protein is at high enough threshold. It just really depends on how much the person eats, and it's so different for each person to person of when their body is in ketosis, when it's not.
Okay, so that's interesting. And nutrition is one of those subjects that just, to me, has always been extremely difficult. There's so many different types of diets. Every individual obviously is going to need different things. They're going to require different, so they say macros, right? That's fat, carbs, protein. Everyone's going to need a different mix based on their energy levels. So this is going to come off as weird because you've done it for a living, but can you trust nutritionists? Are they full of shit? Are they serious? Like, is it important for me to go consult with someone who's an expert on nutrition before I start these diets? Should I just experiment and see what makes me feel better? Should I trust my body when it feels good eating something? Should I listen to that? Can you talk on that?
So, nutritionists I would compare to like you would, compare them to doctors or any other profession, really.
So I was off base.
No, meaning that there are good ones and there are bad ones.
Okay, gotcha.
There are some people that know 100% what they're talking about, others that don't, with any profession. Really, nutrition as a whole, though, and the reason I think a lot of it has gotten so complicated over the years is it's something new to sell. Someone comes out with their new idea, their new philosophy, it spins off into a new fad diet, and people buy into that because, keto is kind of made a resurgence lately because it's like, wait, I can eat bacon, cheese, that's what people are drawn towards because it's not the boring here's my eggs in the morning with a little bit of fruit, that stuff bores people over time. But if I could say, just I guess summing it up as a whole and who to listen to, there are plenty of people out there that know exactly what they're talking about. But what they should be teaching you probably is the basics of learning how to count your macronutrients. And for most people, it's something that they don't know how to do because they've never been taught, and that's why nutrition's confused.
And is that a percentage thing when you say count your macros? So like we said, there are the 3: fat, carbs, protein. Is it the percentages or like the total, like the value of each? Like this many grams of protein, this many whatever.
Normally you would measure it in a grams amount, like, hey, today I'm trying to hit 150 grams of protein, 200 grams of carbs, 70 grams of fat. But with all of those, a gram of fat has 9 calories per gram, a gram of protein and carbs only have 4 calories per gram. So that's when they say some foods are a little more dense than others. High fatty foods have more calories, or so they take a little bit longer to digest just because they're so packed full of calories, energy essentially. So really just finding somebody to help you calculate that, because if you know that, hey, I'm trying to hit 150 grams of protein today, that's 4 calories per gram, that's 600 carbs there for me there are 600 calories there on the day. And so it makes it very easy to count your calories, because at the end of the day, not all the time. I know some people don't like the calories in versus calories out, but there is science to support that. If you are in a caloric deficit from how much you burned today versus what you ate, you're gonna lose weight over time.
Right.
So,
and for me, I like that. Yeah. That's simple. It's easy. I don't have to worry about all the other stuff. If I'm intaking more energy than I'm burning, I'm gaining weight, because I'm from the opposite. I kind of want to gain more weight.
Exactly. And it's useful there as well. If you're in a caloric surplus, you're gonna, eventually either it's gonna be fat or muscle, but you are going to put on weight.
Right. Yeah. And so then that leads into another thing, and I guess it's building sustainable habits of nutrition. Are cheat days okay? Do I need to do one of these fad diets we've discussed, or can I just eat healthy vegetables, fruits, and lean meats? Or so how have you structured other people's diets in the past, and in what ways have you found the most success? Because it's super hard to maintain a healthy nutritional diet.
Yes. And as someone who's done it for years too, I struggle with it. Everybody does. There are very few people that I've met through the years that just are strict all the time. So to answer the one question, yes, let yourself enjoy life, have good food, have drinks. That is, at the end of the day, why most people get into fitness in the first place, because they want to be able to look their best but still enjoy life too. And that's, to me, is the goal for it. It's, bettering yourself, physically and mentally, so that you can go and you've earned those treats and, those margarita, whatever it is that you want on the weekend, you've earned that. But as far as just something that I would give to the average person, fad diets are great if it's somebody who, let's say, has struggled with diabetes, things like that, or higher resting blood glucose levels. You could always go to the keto diet. That would be metabolically very healthy for them. Someone who's significantly overweight, needs to lose a lot of weight fast, that's a great diet to start with, because metabolically it's going to kind of reset their system. But that's for a specific person. For the average population, just getting a good, just basic spread of carbs, fats, and protein is great. But most people, I normally kind of do moderate protein, moderate carbs, lower to moderate fat. So, let's say for your average 200-pound male that is active, lifts weights, I could have him anywhere between 150 grams of protein to 200, depending on how much he lifts weights. Carbs, 200 to 250 grams. Fats, maybe around 70 to 90 grams.
Okay.
Very just good, based out kind of, that's giving you a little bit of a mix of everything, trying to keep it under what his, input is daily, which is going to be so different for everyone, because, we all have our watches and things like that guesstimate that, but you truly don't know somebody's metabolic rate. So you just kind of have to base, here's your diet on how active I really think you are.
And then you can tweak it as you go.
Yep, exactly.
Okay. So I've heard from people in the fitness world that if you're exercising at a relatively routine basis, you're eating pretty well, your body will start craving what it needs. So I've heard if you're really on your game, you can just eat what you kind of want. Like, obviously don't go to McDonald's, whatever, but you're going to be like, I really want a steak right now. I just lifted. Is that true? Have you experienced that yourself? Obviously you're going to have days where you're like, I want a McFlurry.
Yes,
or whatever.
yes. And
but
naturally, yes, the more energy you're burning, I know even for me personally, this last year, really getting into running. When you're running 35 to 40 miles a week, your body needs food a lot more than when you're not doing that.
And like you said, energy-dense food,
yes,
too.
exactly. And, stuff that, because normally if you're somebody who's a big runner, the thing that we fuel ourselves with while we're going along is carbs, because they're quick digesting,
like
fast.
Goo packets?
Yeah, there's probably about 8 of them up in that pantry right there. But those are quick digesting, but you use them, like right then to keep your body going. So yes, more nutrient-dense foods. When you're eating like that, you crave that because it's like, man, I just need something that's satiating and that is really going to fill me up and use for good fuel for the long run.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you start exercising regularly, that'll help your nutrition on the end, because your body will start kind of craving some things you want. Or
and you can get away with more naturally. That's really back to my point earlier of that's why we all work out, is so we have some wiggle room to eat those type of things.
And so what's a good workout number? So say someone a guy or a girl, early 20s, mid 20s, how many days a week should you work out? How much time each workout? And what balance of cardio and weightlifting should you do?
Oh, and it's going to be so
different
variable.
For everybody, right?
Everybody's goals are so different.
Your average guy and then your average girl.
Really, for everyone, I always try and give the base plan of, let's try and maybe get some resistance training, weightlifting, 3 days a week. 4 for people who want to be a little bit more advanced, maybe guys or girls that are looking to build a little more muscle. But for the average person, 3 days a week with resistance training is great.
And I like how you say resistance. That means you could be doing the bands or body weight, push-ups, stuff like that.
Exactly.
So it's just something, push or pull.
Yeah.
Much.
And you and I both know this too. Like a lot of girls, I think in general, can be intimidated by just weightlifting because they think of like heavy, just pumping iron, but like resistance training can really be anything that you make it, not something that's making you bulky essentially. But so for the average person, 3 days a week of resistance training, really trying to hit the full body. A lot of bodybuilding guys will split it up, chest and back, things like that. For the average person, you don't need to do that because you're not trying to just build particular areas normally.
Right.
So doing an upper body day, lower body day. Maybe your last day of the week is more core work, things of that nature. It's a great place to start. And keeps you kind of from getting bored too. You can really add some variety into your workouts doing it that way with larger areas that you're working on. And trying to throw in some cardio on those days too if you want to do both, 30 minutes of resistance training, maybe a 30-minute walk in the morning, run, whatever you want to do for cardio, always great. It's never going to be something you regret doing essentially.
Right.
Or some people like to split it up. So Monday I'm doing my upper body lift. Tuesday I'm going to wake up and do cardio that morning.
Okay.
So
it's okay to do both on the same day, or you can divide it up. It's really just do it.
Yeah. And really the biggest thing is just, I always say, and it's super cliche, but is consistency. I have been somebody who's been involved in working out religiously since I was 14 to 15 years old. So a lot of guys and gals will ask me like, hey, how do I get in shape like that? And I'm like, I've literally been doing it now for 10 years almost now. And it, over time, the more and more and more you do it, the more muscle you build, the more metabolically healthy your body becomes just through natural activity. It's almost easier over time to keep yourself in shape than it feels at the beginning, because a lot of people don't see instant results, and it's like, but the people you look at that are in great shape, they've been doing that for so long. Their body is trained to be there. So consistency really is the biggest thing.
And so I think that's a good segue into what you did. I mean, you said you've trained about 150 people. What did that do for their lives? Obviously, there's various people. If you're over 300 pounds and you take them down to 200, that's going to be a way different win than if you took me to like 210. It's not the same. But I guess what were the key factors to success for those individuals? And then, like I said, how did it transform their lives in a positive way?
Yeah. For everyone, really their why behind getting into fitness is so different. And for me, I think that was always the most important thing when working with a client is, why is this important to you? Because for me, I just was somebody who naturally liked it. I like to push.
You're a weirdo, man.
Yeah, exactly. That's something that is enjoyable to me. But I am a 0.000, very small percent of the population. And I think people kind of forget that sometimes because they look up to these people that on Instagram, social media that just look incredible. I'm like, oh my gosh. And I always like, don't use that as, you know, your icon, because those are normally the few freak people that, one, have amazing genetics, and two, normally just like to do it as their hobby. So of course
they spend a lot of time on it.
Yeah, exactly. But for the average person, their why could vary between, got a wedding coming up, I want to look awesome in my wedding dress, you know, or I've just, you know, made a deal with my friends, you know, a sober October thing where
lose some weight.
Who's going to lose the most weight here? So different. And for some people, it generally is just, hey, I've been overweight my entire life and I want to make a change. And like, so this is a lifestyle, long-term thing that I want to change about myself. Once you figure that out, you can really kind of get into the psyche and motivation of what's going to keep them going. And I think that's what's most difficult for people sometimes, is trying to figure that out, because you can't just have the same style and approach with everyone to keep them motivated.
Definitely.
And you know, so I always liked kind of having that challenge of figuring that out. And I think for all of those people, even if their goals are different, what fitness does and what it teaches them is so important long term, because it's just the old kind of basic old fact of, you put in some hard work, you're normally going to see results from it. And that can be your job, family, relationships, anything. But physically, I guess, exerting yourself like that and seeing the reward is something that most people have actually really never experienced before.
Definitely.
And so when they do it, for a lot, it just triggers this thing within them, because it's that, you know, positive reward, positive reinforcement.
Definitely.
And it's like, wow, like I really did bust my butt and I see this. And so it kind of can then transfer to all aspects of their life. And not for everyone. A lot of people get into it and they're like, man, working out is just not for me.
Hard.
Yeah, I'll never like it really, and I'll just do it as something that I do because I know it keeps me healthy. And that's great too. And that's, you should not force yourself to do something you don't find enjoyment from. But a lot of people do really find this just like natural, very, I guess, just instinctual sense that you get from like, man, like I just busted my butt. I know it's good for me, and that feels rewarding.
Definitely. And I know for me personally, it's like before the workout, I'm like, something happened, so I'm pulled from having to do this.
Yeah.
In the workout, it's fine.
Yep.
But after, it's a high.
Yeah.
It's like I feel great. I feel good. I know I don't work out enough, but so I guess that's a good segue. For someone like me, you think the why is very important in finding your clarity. And so what were those conversations like? Was that something that you put into your practice intentionally? Was that taught to you by someone else? What made you think of, I know Simon Sinek has the really famous YouTube video, Start With Why. I haven't heard it applied to fitness like that. So tell me about those conversations and how you kind of worked that into your regimen.
Yeah, and so I won't give myself credit. There is plenty of trainers and, you know, really life coaches in general that use that. Like you mentioned Simon, and that's one of the, you know, I think most famous TED Talk videos ever. They teach it in sales school all over the world. You know, that can be applicable in so many different aspects of our lives. But Jesse Leva is a guy who kind of originally got me into training.
Is he your mentor, Johnny?
Yes. Jesse James Fitness, giving you a plug. Louisville, Texas, great studio. But he's really the one who kind of taught me and took me under his wing and really brought that in, that like, hey, it's great you love to lift weights. You'll find some other people that want to do it because they want to compete. There's like weightlifting. Most people are going to be way different. They're in here because they're going through a rut in their life, whatever it may be. And, you know, this is their kind of escape and trying to make that change. And really, I think it just comes through being personable and getting to, I just know somebody on that level beyond I'm your trainer. And you're not going to find out their why at first. It's going to take a while.
So you're almost like a therapist.
In a sense. We always used to joke about that you can be in a sense. But being around someone long enough, making them feel comfortable with that, hey, even because a lot of people don't feel comfortable with like, this is a fitness person, they're in shape, like they're probably thinking I look dumb doing this, and it's just, it's not that way. I always approach it always as like, this is exciting for me to be here and get to help you, and maybe I don't get you to fall in love with this like me, but I can at least make it a much more positive outlook for you. Yes. Yeah. And I think that breaks people down over time, and you really get to find out like, hey, what's your why behind being here? And that's where I think you really get client retention, keeping them long term. It's a great just life skill to develop in general, is finding the motivations for people behind why they're doing certain things.
I like that. I think that's a lesson that goes a lot further than just fitness.
Yeah.
And so I guess that leads me to put you on the spot a little bit. It's okay if you don't have an answer for this, but can you tell us about the best success story you had for someone you trained? Like someone, maybe they were obese or not, and they really just turned their life around. Maybe they got out of depression. They lost their anxiety. Because you said, it sounded really psychological.
Yeah.
A lot of it. You have a fear of looking dumb when you go to the gym.
Yeah.
You have a fear of not liking your body.
Yeah.
So do you have a success story that comes to mind?
Oh gosh, just without using names for
Obviously,
people, because obviously people can be a little bit more sensitive about that stuff. I can really, there's a couple I guess that come to mind. One of them that I think was kind of that I would say most proud of, or is the coolest for me. Two. I'll start with the first one. I'll use his name because we're close, but my good friend Grant Davis was kind of the first person that I ever took under my wing that was really interested in it like I was.
And he does competitions, or?
Yes, Grant has competed a few times. We've worked together. I've coached him.
Was that his goal when he came to you?
Yes,
okay.
And that was my first time ever working with somebody that actually had the same focus as me. And it was so interesting because I finally got to see from the other side that, wow, like he really just likes the process, the grind, the just physical effort that he puts into this is something that...
He likes pain.
Yeah, exactly. Masochist to a certain extent. He gets that high from that. And that I think that's when that clicked for me, that was like, this is a small breed of people, I guess. And it just...
It's your tribe.
Yeah, and it was really cool because I think watching him go through that, Grant's, super successful now, awesome job within Fidelity, like... That work ethic that he developed at 17 years old from doing that and learning that, like, man, it's going to suck sometimes, but if you put yourself through this, like, you're going to have a lot of success from it. And he did through competing, his job, and, like, just him as a person now. I see all of those things that, I tried to instill, as kind of a mentor to him at the time, even though we were close in age, that it can carry on to so many different things that it has. And so that's really cool to think, just because I think a lot of him as a person. And then really, I can narrow it down to about 3 or 4 weight loss clients that come to mind that, really had just been overweight for many years. A friend of mine that I didn't necessarily train, but I'll use his name too, Travis Driver, that, we're familiar with and grew up with. Most people know that Travis was, very overweight most of his life till about our sophomore year in college or high school. And then just made like a 360 turnaround and got into doing competitions and things of that nature. And seeing him just kind of go through that transition of people, and he's even told me this, his words not mine, that people just kind of thought of him as the I guess chubbier fat guy growing up, and then to kind of see him go through this full circle thing where it's like all this new confidence and this new person that he essentially became.
Did become a new person.
Exactly.
Awesome to see.
Yeah, exactly. So him, a couple of my weight loss clients, that for me is the most exciting too, to see on the other end of it, where it's like, I'm doing this because I want to change my life here. Mm-hmm. And I want people to, like, in a sense respect me, that like I went and did this on my own and I was the one who put in the work. And it's crazy because all of them, Travis is getting his doctorate in aerospace engineer, and then plenty of the other people that I'm thinking of off the top of my head have gone on to have very successful careers, families, and it's like it almost stays with them forever, that like I know I can always put in the work to change whatever I want, no matter how behind the ball I may feel. If I really dedicate myself to it, I can make it happen.
And I think that's awesome, and I think that's a good spot to kind of wrap up. Just the key takeaways for me personally that you brought, Josh, is, to start with why, especially in fitness. If you know why you're doing something, you're not going to quit as quickly because you've given yourself a reason. And I think why not is also important. Giving yourself if I don't do this, if I don't get in shape, I might end up on my 600-pound life or something.
Yep.
No one wants to end up there. Building those habits, and then it sounds like building the community is important in the fitness space too. Having those people to encourage you, to support you, and ask questions. And I guess that leads to your plug, Josh. So like, what's your Instagram handle? If people could DM you to ask nutrition questions, are you going to start giving advice out there and just give your plug?
Definitely. So I get Instagram is Josh Lewis, all one word, Lewis, 23, all one word. But yes, that's something that I've kind of started to get back into this year. I know we didn't touch on it, but I've been a certified trainer through the Cooper Institute since I was 18 years old, and trained up until really I was 24, and now work within my job with J&J. So not something I do full time, but I've really started trying to be more active on social media and just give people a positive outlook, because you said it best that it's a community. And I think sometimes in the social media era of fitness, we've kind of gotten lost in that, and people just have this 0.005% of the population to look up to, and they're like, man, I'm never going to look like that. And it's not all. Some of those people, all they do is it's kind of a self-glorification thing. Definitely. And it can put others down, and that's not what it's supposed to be about. It's about to see normal, everyday people that incorporate fitness in their life, however it may be, through whatever avenue that is that they choose to do it through, but it's bettering their lives. Everything else, their life isn't fitness, if that makes sense.
And as someone who's not a gym rat, I understand it can be intimidating and hard to get into, but Josh is a super approachable guy, and the thing is, he likes talking about this stuff. You can see the passion in him. If you have questions, he'd be happy to answer them. Give him a follow, talk to him, and figure out what's best for you. And I think, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you'd like to see everyone really get after that fitness. I think the whole world would benefit from that. So I think it's really cool that you do that, man. And I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me.
Of course, dude. Awesome talking with you. And I hope that this message reaches people that maybe have kind of been worried about this, or overthink their fitness. And if I could give just a final quote on it, is don't overthink it. Do it because it's something you want to do. Don't feel insecure about wherever you're at. Everybody has had a starting place before, and always lean on good-hearted people that really do want to be there and help you, because there's plenty of them out there that will.
I think that's great, man. I appreciate you.
Thanks, brother.
Take care.